Alright, let's get it going. Hello there, I'm EnviroBoy. This is my channel. It's Monday. Yay. No, I don't think most people are super stoked about that in general, but hey, you know what? Hopefully, we can all sit here and do something creative and make Monday just a little bit better. It's still snowing out there. So around here this weekend, we were teased by Mother Nature with a nice warm day, so warm that many people were walking around in just t-shirts, forgetting about jackets altogether. Granted, it's a little bit of that sort of immersion bias where we get so used to it being so cold that, relatively speaking, it felt warm enough for that. But even so, even without that, it was a warm weekend. It was really nice, and everyone was like feeling that spring fever and getting ready for all that. And then last night happened, and it got cold, and we've been getting snow all day. We've got like 2 or 3 inches of snow now. So that's to be expected around these parts. We get a lot of fake springs. We always get 2 or 3 sort of beginning of spring days around these parts. That's just how it goes, and you kind of get used to it around here. I mean, like, you get used to it, and in the sense of, like, when it happens, you're like, yeah, no, that makes sense. But you never, like, when it's actively happening, you never really feel okay with it. It's always a bummer. I guess that's the only way to really, like, adequately describe it. It's just a bummer, because you get so excited about that weather coming in, and then the rug gets pulled out from under your feet immediately, and it's just disappointing. So At any rate, I will say, it's that type of snow where, like, because there's still a little bit of that residual warmth, and because the ground and, you know, the world kind of warmed up a little bit over the weekend, we're getting that type of snow where it's like the warm, almost melty, sticky snow. So it's like sticking to all the tree branches and stuff, which does make it quite scenic and very pretty to look at. I'd prefer if we were getting more of that, you know, on the front end of winter, and then right now we could just stick with the spring, but you know what? It's okay. It's okay. I'll take whatever silver lining I can get out of all of that. You know, it's the best you can do sometimes. So, you know, it could be worse. It could certainly be worse. And I am at least happy that I get to sit here and work on some writing. And yeah, hopefully y'all come along with me and we'll come up with some cool stuff. Let me get us swapped over here to our live scene. There it is. Beautiful. Love to see it. Love to see it. All right, so last Friday, we worked on we went through a lot of the mechanics. We went through a lot of mechanics. Hey, Live and Let's Die, how's it going? It's going well for me. Thank you for asking. Glad to see you here. And yes, thank you. I've been having a lot of fun with transitions and borders and scenes and everything like that. I'm perhaps a teeny bit obsessed, but you know, we all have our things. But yeah, so last Friday we started working a bit on trying to get some of the sort of mechanical components of this next chapter in our campaign going. Namely, we hashed out exactly what sort of experience point spread we need for each different portion of this chapter as our players are kind of going through it, and how we wanted to sort of sort all of that out. And so we went through that tedium, and it always ends up taking much longer than you think it's going to, which is why I like to just sort of do it up front and get it taken care of. But yeah, so we kind of got that figured out. And so what I really want to do today, and it may take the entire time, and I'm totally okay with that, because I want to take the time to make sure, because this is one of the most important components of making sure we set up the atmosphere and the just sort of like setting the scene and the feel, the tone of what everything is going to be as we're adding more detail to this portion of the campaign. And so what we're going to do is I want to figure out what all of our enemy spread is going to be, what all of the different monsters and villains and everything like that are going to be throughout this chapter. Because once we kind of figure that out, that is one of the most important tone setting things, because that's kind of the detail when you're talking theater of the mind. I mean, we definitely take the time to explain the setting and describe the scene to our players, no doubt. we want to do that, but that's like one paragraph at the beginning of whatever is then going to happen for the next 15, 20 minutes to an hour, depending on how long whatever you present to them takes for them to resolve, like whatever problem, whether it's monsters, whether it's a trap, whether it's an ally, whatever it is, right? When we're describing the scene, we're giving them just a small snapshot to sort of put their, like, I always think about it as like putting the color in their head, like, and maybe that's just because that's how my brain kind of operates, where when I'm thinking about a scene, I kind of think about a particular color that describes the scene. Is it nighttime? Well, then it's going to be a very dark blue or something like that. Is it taking place in a forest? All right, well, we've got like maybe green and brown, right? And those are like the colors that set the setting, right? And like for me, that's how my brain works, and so that's what the descriptions are, and it's important. But when it comes to like actually feeling the tone and like minute by minute setting up the scene and how our players are going to be feeling and experiencing things, the monsters, the enemies, the allies, they play a very crucial component of that. And so that's for me why I like to take the time to really hash out, all of this detail about like, okay, specifically how difficult are these monsters going to be? Because that's an important part of how this feels. Does it feel dangerous? Does it feel like they're in control? A lot of that is controlled by all of, how difficult things are going to be. And then we pick the type of monsters. Are we doing monstrosities? Are we doing humanoids? Are we doing animals? Are we doing elementals? Those types of things really set the tone, and those are what maintain the tone, because while I'll describe a room once to my players, maybe a couple times, depending on if they need to re-go over some details for the sake of whatever their plans or actions are to handle the situation, generally speaking, it's the monster that they're dealing with for the next, like, half an hour during that battle. That monster is the thing that is front and center. That's the thing that they keep getting more information about as every single turn progresses. So for this, it's a really important part to me, and it's why I like to plan it out ahead of time, and it's why I like to really take my time with this, because it ends up being one of the most forefront important parts of what players are going to be experiencing and going through. So I don't know, thanks for coming to my TED Talk, I guess, but it's an important part, and so I want to take the time and go through all of that. First, the very first thing that I need to do, though, is I'm going to copy and paste this, because we're going to have we're going to have 6 room sets here. Come on, OneNote, you can handle this. I know you can do it. I know you can do it. There we go. We'll just copy that. I did not remember to get our... Shoot. Oh, it's got to include this thing. It's got to include our partition. And now we just wait for it to, like, just painfully slowly catch up. I don't know why this is the one. That OneNote is like, whoa, man, you are just asking too much of me. Like, that's the part of all of the ridiculous things that I make my computer do day in and day out. That's the one that it's like, listen, bud, why don't you just slow your roll a bit? All right, so that's 3, 4, 5, 6. That's all we need. We only need 6. All right, the next section will have 7. So let me make sure I counted that right, though. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. There we go. Good old the count. I attribute him to much of my counting ability. All right. So each as always, I'm going to stick with my usual formula because it works, so why fix what isn't broken? I have, so we've kind of mapped out some of the stuff already here. We're going to copy this, actually, and we're going to go ahead and put this right there because that's what we need, and then we're going to grab all of these things, tab them over one more time so the format fits. Again, why OneNote decides it wants to get all kinds of wacky and wonky with these things is just beyond me. I am going to actually, now that I think about it, just do it like this. That's just, I don't know why. I like the way that looks better. It is what it is. So we've got that, and then our skill checks. These are baseline skill checks. These are not hard and fast rules. I will sometimes make things, usually it's that I'll sometimes make things harder. I'll rarely make things any easier because I do trend these towards somewhat easy. And I mean, really the reason for that, I guess we could sit here and analyze my psychology about why I do it this way. There may be like half a dozen reasons why I do it this way, but ultimately, when I consciously think about why I trend towards easy, it's because I want my players to succeed and I want them to have fun. So, like if I were like a professional that got hired by people and they wanted a Dark Souls experience, like, okay, yeah, we'll crank that up if that's what they wanted. But when I'm just sitting here playing with my friends, I don't want my friends to sit here and never feel like they're accomplishing anything. It's a game. They're the heroes. Forget it. Trend it towards easy, and then if we really want something to be difficult, we can add more to it. But having these baseline skill check levels for an easy, a medium, or a difficult challenge based on what they're trying to do and how difficult I think that should be. If I have this preset out, I say this all the time, if I have this preset out, it's primarily for my own benefit, but it's also just so that they're kind of aware of the situation. It makes it so that it feels like a success or a failure feels less, on the whim of my emotions and more, this was planned out, even if my players are being creative and trying something that I didn't expect them to do, right? I don't want my players to feel like my numbers that I choose for whether something succeeds or fails is arbitrary. And considering that there isn't really a steadfast rule of like, oh, this level of skill check should be a success and this level should be a failure, right? It's meant to be sort of a fluid thing. This at least gives us a centralized starting point to then expand from if we need to. And these do go up with each level. They still trend towards easy because that's just my preference. But we'll adjust them based on level as we need to. But generally speaking, I find that it's good to have these predetermined so that for my benefit, but then also for players, if someone's having just a bad day and they're feeling a little grouchy and a little testy about things, it's known that I have these predetermined, and this isn't a matter of, well, I don't like what you did, so I'm gonna find a way to make sure that you fail at it. It's like it's not about that. It's not about that. It never is about that. And I don't want my players to ever think it's about that. So we just set that up right there. TED Talk and all that. So, excuse me. So now we got to figure out our enemies. I guess what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to do this for each floor really quickly. Because I do intend for us to go through all of the floors here today. So we'll just go ahead and set this up here. This is a little tedious and time consuming, and actually because of how I'm doing it that way. Floor 3, copy that. 1, that's 2, right? Yep, that's 2, and there's 3. Then we'll put that in there. Whoops. Oh, because I forgot to grab the total, or I missed grabbing the total one in here. Hold on, gotta keep the format. I can't break the pattern. Like, you can't do it mid-document. It just looks weird. It looks weird and unacceptable when you do that. At least in my brain it is, and since I'm the one who has to look at this all the time, then, well, all the more reason for me to just go ahead and acquiesce rather than sitting here and fighting my own nature. Alright, here's number 4. Paste that in there. Tab that up. 1. Yep. Grab floor 5. Whoops. Oh, come on. There we go. Floor 5. Copy that. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4, right? Oh, no, was that 5? Did I didn't miss one, did I? Or I didn't screw up somehow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. I want to make sure. Because I've done that before where it's like you go through the process, scroll up, copy, scroll down, paste, scroll up, copy, to find out that somewhere like in number 2, I goofed up and got myself off center with it. And so now I got to redo it all again because there's no fast way to fix it. Every time I do that to myself, I just kick myself. Hate it. I get so annoyed when I make silly mistakes like that. Which maybe says something about my psychology and how harsh I am on myself, but okay, DC 11. These will stay the same throughout the floor, throughout the floors, because I don't necessarily need these to get progressively more and more difficult for players. For this part, the difficulty increase between between parts of this chapter is more about the frequency with which we'll offer them easies, mediums, and difficults. That's usually my approach to it. But the other thing about it too is a lot of times too, it just depends on what the check is and how easy or difficult it ought to be. So it's also hard to have a fluctuation in these things without it getting too extreme too fast. That's the other problem with DC is, like, when we're talking about experience points the way I do with the monster difficulties, I mean, it kind of ends up leveling out a little bit because the experience points do kind of translate to challenge rating. So, you know, there's a little bit of magnification risk there. But generally speaking, because challenge rating includes like 0, quarter, it's like 0, 1/8, 1/4, 1/2, and then 1, and then also goes from like 20 up to 30, we have a lot more leeway, so we get a lot more of that, you know, that wiggle room. So we don't need to, so we can be a bit more fine-tuned with it. But like, I mean, I guess in theory we could do that with the challenge ratings, right? Where it's like, you know, in theory you could just keep on going that DC up and up and up and up and up and up. But when you think about mechanically, since it's based on like player skills and proficiencies and stuff like that, there is sort of an upward limit, and there is actually a pretty early lower limit as well. I mean, there's a certain point. It's like when you get below 10 for a skill check or for a challenge, you might as well just have it be like a coin flip. You know, either they did it or they didn't do it. But even then, it's like, you know, if it's a DC 8 and someone's making a roll and they have like a +6 because of proficiencies and skills and bonuses and all that kind of stuff, it's like, why? It kind of gets to that point where it's like, boy, you have to like basically, like, if they're doing a search, it's like, wow, your eyes pretty much have to fall out of your head to fail if it's that easy. So in those situations, so for those, it just, I don't know. I don't really even know what point I'm making. It's just stream of consciousness here, but it's like, I guess really what it comes down to is, this is a pretty good balance here. We'll just throw more difficult and we can bump it up if we need to, but for the most part, there's a little less change in these things throughout a chapter. And we just change that from chapter to chapter, whereas with the enemy difficulty, because I like the enemies to get slowly more and more difficult, and because of the way enemies are kind of designed in 5th edition, there's a lot more wiggle room for adding that variety in there. So, anywho, that gets us kind of where we need to be. So now the thing to think about here is all of our enemies. So I want to... The enemies within this chapter are going to really be... They're really going to be focused on just like animals, beasts, and maybe like monstrously large versions of those beasts. But I don't want to get too wild and crazy with having wild, wacky, insane, twisted things or like fey creatures, ethereal creatures, and stuff like that. I really want this town to just feel like it's a post-apocalyptic town that has been returned to nature. That's kind of the feeling that I'm going for, and the idea is that the boss battles will be just like particularly large versions of creatures or dangerous versions of creatures. We kind of got a taste of it in the last chapter when we finished off with our little miniature King Kong hunt type of situation. You know, it's like I'm kind of going for more of that vibe, more of the monster hunt vibe, just because we've been laying it on thick with monstrosities in particular, because we've spent so much time in and among mountains, which are just such a good place for doing like really weird, wacky, monstrous things. Just because it kind of serves as like a pressure cooker for all kinds of underground things, which already seem pretty alien to us, you know. So we've already got a lot of that alien monstrosity oozes and Duragar and dark things and large monsters, right? We've already got a lot of that going on, and the next chapter is going to be very much horror based, right? Like that's what we're heading towards. So we've kind of got two really dark chapters that are going to surround this one. So I want this one to really just feel a bit lighter, a bit more fun, a bit more like, oh yeah, there's like some horrible giant hyena. Let's go hunt it down. Let's get some trophies, right? It's like I really want this to feel lighthearted and simple, No politics, no nothing, just monsters to slay. Is really what I'm going for this one. And so as we're doing that, let's go ahead and let me first off wait, hold on. I'm looking at my playback here. Can we? No, it's gonna start getting cut off. Well, not if I keep what we're working on in the center there. That's actually kind of the perfect size. We'll do that. We'll just make sure that I don't scroll so far down that my big stupid head gets in the way of whatever I'm typing. That'll make it a little bit easier to see. And for me too, because now that I have like an actual mic, although I have it positioned, you don't really see the mic. Now that I have an actual mic, I can't just like carry sound with me when I'm trying to see something, and I gotta like contacts. Right? It's like that doesn't go with me, so I have to like stay back here and upright. Remain with your chair seats back in the upright position. So, but yeah, let's go ahead and get some. Let's start looking at some monsters, right? So our basic breakdown, the way I always do these things, right, is so we have our fodder, our soldiers, our leaders, and a boss. And the idea is always like the rough approximation that I try to stick to is fodder. 10 of these creatures should make up a medium battle, right? So these guys should be worth about 35 experience points apiece. Obviously, it's a pretty small number of experience points, so we might have to be a little flexible with that, and that's totally fine. That's just kind of the benchmark that I am trying to look for there. Soldiers, it's always about 5 of them would make a medium, so around like the 70 experience points. Again, we'll play with that a little bit as needed. For leaders, it's always 2 or 3 would make a medium, so that maths out to like, I don't know, like somewhere between like 100 and like 175 or something like that is kind of what we're looking for. And then the boss is one of them would make a medium, and we always do that because then the boss battle we have extra experience points, so we can throw some lackeys and some minions in with them, so that way it's a more challenging battle than just all of them. All right, surround the bad guy and whack 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 until he dies, right? They can just like really war of attrition it if there's no lackeys with them. So that's why we always gear for the medium battle there, and then we can mix and match things to, you know, come up with easy or difficult battles and everything. So let's take a peek-see-poo here. I like to start out with a boss a lot of times because then you can use that to determine the minions, right? So let's see if I'm remembering my challenge ratings right. A 350. So wait, hold on. 1/4 is what? 150. Quarter is 150. Half is 100. 1 is 200, which means a challenge rating 2 should be about 450. And I'm thinking if I mean, you know, it's supposed to be on the nose would be 350. So if we do 450, that's pretty functional there, if I'm remembering them right here. Hold on, let's just first off make sure I'm. Why did it not do? Oh, because the 2 is the minimum. I was like, why is it giving me all these others? Okay, yeah. These guys are set to 450 experience points, and then just to make sure that I'm remembering this properly, because as soon as I started getting confident and thinking that I really remember it all and know everything is exactly when I'm going to put myself in a position where I'm just doing something stupid and wrong. Yeah, 200 experience points. So we'll go ahead and go with the 450. We'll go with the challenge rating 2. So let's go ahead and back up to our challenge rating 2s there. Filter our monsters. Start with that one. Now, I'm going to start off just by filtering by beasts and only having beasts here and see what's available. And if there's kind of too much, actually. So I'm going to start off with looking at maybe grassland and maybe hill. Right, because that's really like, because we're kind of in a prairie, you know, the Golden Wind Plains, right? That's kind of what we're setting up. So we're going to start, oops, oh shoot, I clicked refresh all. There we go, filter monsters that way, there we go. So we'll start with that, and if there's not something that I'm really looking for, there's not something that I'm vibing with, that I'm feeling like it's really what I want, then we'll go ahead and broaden our search engine, and we'll just like, I don't know, play fast and loose with explanations about why this or that thing is there. Because clearly we don't have a whole lot. I immediately love the idea of a rhinoceros. That would be a hilarious battle. Though I do rankle a little bit at the idea of killing rhinos, just because the real world implications of those situations are kind of like, you know, that's a little uncomfortable. So I do kind of like the idea of a rhino. But I don't know. Like, we could go with a giant boar as well. Let's take a look at. Let's go ahead and do that, and let's filter the monsters this way a little bit and see what else we have available for some lower sized things. Because thematically, the hard part with a rhino is thematically there's not anything that would be like sensibly a minion or a weaker version of it. Whereas if we do a giant boar, then we can just do like regular boars. The alternative is we could just find something that has similar stuff, right? So we could use like boars and everything for our sort of minions, our easier versions of everything. We could do that, like use those and then just reskin them as like smaller rhinos and just have like the boss be like super mega sized rhino and just like flavor it that way. Like, we could do that, and that wouldn't be the worst option. But I don't know that I'm ready to fall back on that yet. I want to look at what all is available. Because, yeah, like, see a cow here with charge. We could charge and gore. We could totally use a cow as a smaller rhino for a miniature enemy. That would totally work. That would 100% work. No one would question it. It has charge and gore. What else is a rhino gonna do? I mean, like, let's go ahead and take a look. The rhino. It has charge and gore. But they're just more powerful versions of it. So we could easily get away with that. We could easily get away with doing that. That would not be out of the question. Right? We can do it with, we can kind of combine those there. The giant boar won't work. We already, giant swan. I do love the concept of a giant swan. A giant hyena would be thematically good, but I don't know that we'll necessarily have a place for them. We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, yeah, and we have ox. Yeah, so we have oxes. We have a giant goat. What do they have? Charge and ram. Ooh, that would work. That would work. Could do that as like a juvenile rhino or something like that. That doesn't really have like as big of a horn or something like that. We could flavor it as. This. If the Roth moves. I don't even remember what these guys are supposed to be. But we have charge and gore, so we could do it. Aren't they just like a version of like a wildebeest or something like that, if I'm remembering properly? I don't remember. But that could work. Okay, yeah. Okay, so the important part here is I think we certainly have cause. I think we certainly have enough stuff going on here. I think we've got enough stuff going on here that we could go ahead and use these guys. I think that'll work. We have enough options for like the weaker enemies that I think we can definitely do that and get away with it here. So let's go ahead and do exactly that. Rhinoceros, challenge rating 2, 450 experience points. That'll be perfectly sufficient here. So, boss, CR2. Actually, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do CR2. Okay. Rhinoceros. Yeah, I didn't think I would get that right. Oh, I just added the extra U. I was close. Spelling has never been one of my strong suits, to the point of, I still remember this to this day. This was in first grade, which would have been when I was, gosh, I would have had to have been like, I don't know, 6 or 7 or something like that in first grade, when I'm trying to think about it. Like, because if like you're 16 and like 10th, yeah, so it would have been like 6 or 7 years old. My teacher at the time called my parents in for a special meeting because she was concerned about how bad my spelling was. Like, I was consistently getting like 5 and 6 out of 10 on my spelling test. Like, I was so bad at spelling. And my ma made me start doing extra like grammar and spelling practice every night because I was so bad at it. I remember that. And that, like, and the thing about it too is I can remember at that age, I wasn't mad, I wasn't annoyed, I was embarrassed. Like, I was so embarrassed that my spelling was that bad. It was bad times. It was bad times back in those days. But, yeah, things happen, and I'm passable enough at those things that at the very least no one has to call my parents and say, what the hell is up with this guy? I've at least got that going for me. And the Rhinoceros is worth 450 XP a pop there. So we got that. And what I want to do, what I've started kind of doing here is I've added a section, like I've added this to my template, but I've done it since setting up this page here. So we're going to do this. I have a new section that I started adding, which I call enemy stats and strats. And the idea here is that it's a section, like a repository, where I'll put all of the like stat blocks. I'll just copy and paste the stat blocks for any enemies there, and I'll put little notes underneath about how to handle them in battle, right? Because they all have like their own special abilities and everything, and so it's like I'll give myself little cliff notes about like, okay, here's just some basic ideas of when to use this thing, how to use this thing, when will these enemies, if they will at all, run and hide versus, you know, going all out. What will they target as far as their enemies? I like to kind of put all those so that way I don't have to spend time thinking and understanding all of that stuff in the middle of battle. Because like it's one thing if you're a player and you have your one character and all you got to think about is your character's generalized strategies, right? It's one thing to be in that situation, and in that situation it's pretty easy to just go ahead and like wing it every battle. You kind of have to, right? You don't always have the opportunity to plan ahead and know like, oh, well, this enemy might do this thing, so if it does this thing, I'm going to do this, right? You don't really have that ability, but you only have one character, so it's easy enough to just go ahead and wing it as you need to, right? There's no real problem with that. But if you're the DM, you have dozens of enemies, and if we're planning ahead like this, dozens of enemies that we're thinking about right now, and we might not actually have to run until, you know, a week or a month or a year later, depending on how far ahead you plan. Like if you're like me and you write these campaigns and you're writing them with enough detail that you can pull these out years and years later and just like run it like a module, then, you know, it might be years. And so how am I supposed to remember, you know, what the stats are for a Rhinoceros if I'm not using them in any other games in the meantime, right? It's too much to expect yourself to get all of that right. So what I do is I'll kind of take the time now to distill their stat block down a little bit and then make myself some cliff notes and be like, okay, yeah, it's probably going to use this attack and this attack and this attack most heavily. And then, like I say, I'll also put notes about just based on the environment, the setting, all that kind of stuff, and say like, okay, this animal is going to probably attack the closest enemy, or it will always attack whoever hit it the last. You know, like do just kind of lay those things out so that way when I'm running the combat with my players there and they're like waiting on me and I've got, you know, half a dozen enemies to have to navigate and manage and know all their turns, like you don't want that to drag on for a half hour. I mean, we get irritated when one player doesn't know their spells well enough so that we have to sit there for 5 minutes waiting for a single player to take a single turn. Imagine if I did that as the DM for 7 enemies every time there was a combat. It would drag on and people would not want to play with me, right? So it's important to kind of have those notes up there and just be able to like, okay, yeah, there's the bullet points. Okay, yeah, we'll do that. And you can just follow that. And it's the Cliff's Notes version, and it makes it just a lot easier to act quickly under pressure when you're the DM. So I've taken to really putting that there and being very determined to make sure I put it in there. It's become one of my most appreciated things that I do for myself. So first we're going to go ahead and we can just take a screenshot, which again, I will never ever get tired of just how wonderful this tool that Firefox has here is. Oh my gosh. It's, well, whether it's Firefox or Windows, I guess I don't actually even know which widget like it belongs to or anything like that. All I know is it's there and just, it's perfect. It's perfect. It could not work out better. It's beautiful. So there we have the Rhinoceros, and then underneath I'm going to put my bullet points, right? So you can take a look here. Rhinoceros armor class 11, has 45 hit points. This will be a pretty easy. Poaching a Rhino and possibly selling its horn, if that's the route that our players, if that's the villainous route our players want to take, not going to be hard for them at this point in time, but that's on purpose. Right, because as I talk about all the time, when I'm presenting my players with a new chapter, I want them to have a few sections where they feel like they are just large and in charge. because I want them to have time to like low pressure practice their new skills and everything. And I also want them to just enjoy leveling up, right? I don't want them to just think about leveling up as being like, oh, great, I guess we're going to almost die to bigger monsters. It's like, nah, you leveled up, have some fun being stronger, right? It's like, you know, as someone who is a kickboxer and, you know, outside of streaming and everything like that, I think about it a lot in that sense. Like, one, we spar and we'll do light sparring, and we'll even do at our gym we call it bodies drill, where there's no doing anything to the head. Everything is from the shoulders down, right? And we do that so that way we can have the freedom to practice things we're not good at, practice new things we've just learned without worrying about getting domed in the head and getting a concussion during practice, right? So we'll do that drill so we can practice with low risk. And it's also fun to do that kind of stuff because then once you get it, you can feel large and in charge just kind of practicing that thing before it really becomes dire and you have to do that thing, you know, while someone's trying to kick your teeth in, right? And so it's like I kind of use that same philosophy for how I design my campaigns because I think that's not a sport-specific thing. That's just a human condition kind of thing. So anyway, that's my philosophy on it. And so the Rhino is going to be pretty easy. It has one move, charge. If the Rhinoceros moves at least 20 feet straight toward a target, then hits it with a gore attack on the same turn, the target takes an extra bludgeoning damage. The target is a creature. It must succeed on a DC 15 strength to be knocked prone. Gore. Okay, so what we're going to do is, when I'm thinking about a Rhino and what it'll probably do, we'll just say, well, let's see here. If not already in melee range of an enemy will charge whoever hit it most recently before its turn, and then we'll just say if going first, just pick a target at random. I don't think a Rhino is going to be discerning enough to say like, oh, well, this guy looks like he's got some magical abilities, or oh, that guy's got a particularly large axe and he looks pretty buff. Like, a Rhino just sees a target and goes, right? Like, that's what it does. So we'll just that's what it'll do. If in melee range, will simply try to gore the same creature until it's unconscious. And that's just what it'll do. Like, even if they're prone or something like that, it'll just keep trying to gore them until they stop moving, basically, is what it'll do. I mean, I would imagine a Rhino would actually include a lot of trampling in that process, but since that's not part of the stat block, then we'll just not worry about it. And we'll just say it just tries to gore everyone. And if it, like, until it's unconscious, and then if that target is unconscious, then it'll look up, and then we'll revert back to that first point. And we'll do that, and then we'll say here, we'll say will not run away, is not super intelligent, and so simply enters berserker mode at the beginning of battle and tries to fight until it wins or dies. And that's just what it'll do. So these guys will not run away. Not all enemies are smart. I try to make my enemies smart enough that it is actually an appreciable challenge for my players, but fact is, not all enemies are smart. That's just the way of it. That's just the way of it. So cool. So there's our Rhino. That's easy enough. Now let's find some other simpler enemies. So our next level down will be our leaders that should have 2 or 3 to make a medium difficulty battle. And if our medium difficulty battle is supposed to be somewhere around 350 experience points, then we're going to look for something that's maybe somewhere around like 100 to 150, right? And so if I'm remembering our stuff right, we've got 100 for our half, and then the next one would bump up to 200. So we could do 200 just to give ourselves a bit more leeway. But if we want to, or rather, not leeway, to give ourselves a bit more of a gradual difficulty curve leading up to our boss, we could do that. But the flip side of it is, if we have more options that are at lower experience point collections, right? If we have more options that are at that lower threshold, then that gives us more freedom to just throw more enemies at players, which ends up being more difficult than one at a higher. So I guess I always lean towards accepting the lower experience point version within reason, right? Like I didn't do that for the boss because that was almost half as much as what we wanted for the boss, right? Because we wanted the boss to be at around 350, and going down to 200 would have been almost half of that. So we go over to make sure the boss is a, you know, comparative threat, even if it's not actually a threat to the players at their level. It's like comparatively, like, oh yeah, that guy's a bit tougher than everything else. But for all of these minions, for at this stage, it's kind of more like, yeah, let's go ahead and just let's go ahead and keep it easy so we can have a bunch of them here. So looking at all of our guys here, let me just check and see. Angzor, what does he have? Ram, charge, sure-footed. I mean, we could really just make it so that all of the enemies are just like reskinned, whatever these things are, and they're like reskinned to look like Rhinos, right? Like we could totally do that. Could totally do that. Oh wait, hold up. But that's a challenge rating 1. We need challenge rating half. Haha, just kidding. Just kidding. We'll ignore that guy. Maybe we can use that in our next section. Who knows? See what the experience point breakdown is. Yeah, and so we'll use the giant goat. This is the same thing. Charge and ram. Perfect. We'll just do that. We can do the giant goat for our next one when I'm thinking about it. So 50 experience points will be about right for our next level down. So a quarter will be about right. And we can do like our rough, right, that we had there. That'll work. We could do a cow or we could do a boar. Actually, I kind of like the idea of doing the cow because it has gore. And then to go even lower, we'll need to get down to like a 1/8. Right, we can do maybe a mule or something like that. And we can really just make it so that an entire pod of rhinos have kind of moved into the city. And that's what the threat is at the time. As they're first going through, is trying to deal with these things, and they're just like super territorial, and so the players have to like figure out how to handle that, and they're just like littering the town. I think that'd be actually really funny. So we'll go ahead and set that up. I think that's a good collection here. So if we go to these guys, need to go, oops, nope, we need to go one page down here. Yeah, so let's go ahead and do the cow. I like the cow. I mean, it's a cow. Who doesn't like cows? Am I right? Take a screenshot, grab that, copy it, going over to here, and we'll go ahead and paste that there, and we'll do their details in a second. I just want to really quickly, before I forget to do it, we'll do CR 1 quarter, and then now because I realized that I should do space there to make it clear for the 1 quarter. Now I want to do that space for all of them because that'll just make it look better. So cow, set to 100 experience points. And we'll say, I don't know, little note there, reskinned as rhinoceros. And we'll just do that. So it's just as simple as that, and that's pretty much what we'll do for all of them. We'll just do the reskinned as rhinoceros. But that way it gives us our thematic thing, and it, because like the thing is I always want it to make sense why the minions are with the boss, right? Like I wouldn't have fun as a DM running it just going like, oh yeah, we've got this rhino and he's accompanied by his merry band of lions. It's like, that doesn't really make sense, right? Like why would they all be helping each other? It doesn't, those animals don't really chill out together, you know? So it's like I don't like being that out there with it. I like there to at least be an internal logic. I mean, yes, we have to suspend disbelief to a certain degree for a lot of things because we are playing a fantasy game, right? That's just the nature of it. But that said, I like there to be a functional internal logic. And so having monsters that it makes sense for them to be together is, to me anyway, an important part of that. So we'll do that. I'm going to actually just, while I'm thinking of it, I'm going to go ahead and get all of the things that we kind of talked about and decided upon in there. Oh, wait. Did I goofed it. We needed to have the giant goat. Those are going to be the 100. It's 1/2. And then the next guys are going to be down there. See, this is why we gotta take the time to plan it ahead. Because it gets tricky to keep it all straight in the brain. So we're going to actually take these guys. We're just going to copy and paste that. Get rid of the extra space because it'll bother me. These guys are actually worth 50 experience points. They're 1 over 2. I'm going to say, was it regular goat or was it a giant goat? It was a giant goat. We'll add the giant in there. Hold on. Let's go ahead and take our screenshot. Copy that. One in here. Well, just for the sake of keeping things in some semblance of an order here. Paste that there. Get ourselves a little bit of space there. So giant goat, cow. And then we got to get one more. Wait, we need a giant goat. And then our last one that we had kind of looked at. So there's our quarters. And we needed to find the 1/8. And we had found some. But I'll find St. Giant Weasel. I got a Mastiff Mule. I think I was going to go with the mule. Sure-footed, beast of burden. Yeah, hooves. I like that. Mule. Well, and we'll go ahead and we'll flavor these ones as like baby rhinos or something and really give our players an existential crisis if they have to kill any of these guys. Let's take a screenshot. It's a little cruel and a little adversarial to present that to our players, but hey, you know what? All of the immoral things that happen in these games that are the direct result of our players making morally questionable decisions, I don't feel like it's really that much of a problem for me to make them have to really think about and possibly face some consequences for taking things just a little too far and killing a baby rhino. They can be all like, "Oh, why would you give us such a horrible thing to have to deal with?" I'll be like, "Why did you choose to kill it? There were a million things you could have done. There are literally no requirements about what you do or don't do for all this. Why'd you do it that way?" Challenge rating 1 over 8 there. Call that a shoot, what was it? It was mule, right? It was mule, not donkey. Yeah, it's mule. It to me it matters to make sure I'm accurate with it because I want to be able to why can't I remember what I was saying about how like my teachers had to discuss with my parents just how much of a failure I was at typing and spelling. Yeah, anyway, and so these guys are worth what, 25? Is it worth 25 or 20 experience points? I just forget. I know those bottom ones get kind of weird. Maybe it's 25 and then like the zeros are worth 10. Is that what it is? Yeah, it's 25 and the zeros are worth 10, right? Yeah, that's where it like breaks from the increments of like 25 or 50 rule that it otherwise holds to. Okay, so we'll do that, and then we gotta wait, where did it go? Oh wait, because I'm in the zeros. No wonder. Mule, there it is. Wait, did I already copy and paste that? My brain is not. Yeah, I did already copy and paste it. My brain's just kind of doing its own thing today. Which, you know, hey, there's worse things in the world, but also focus. Alright, giant goat. Charge, sure-footed. Goat has advantage on strength and dexterity saving throws made against effects that would knock it prone. So yeah, so this guy, honestly, these guys, I feel like we're just gonna be able to kind of copy and paste a lot of these things. They're all gonna behave kind of the same. The melee range will simply try to. We'll just change this to ram the same creature until it's unconscious. Again, just trying over and over to kill it is all it's doing. That's all it do. So we'll just let it. Why fight it? I think the cow does the same thing. Perfectly honestly, I think in fact the cow is even more. No, don't. Why would you put it there? Why would you put the bullets there? Doesn't make any sense. One note, you're making things up. There we go. Yeah, okay. They all just do the same thing. This is not a complicated chapter of our campaign, and that is a-okay. Okay, so now this one's going to be a little different. Beast of burden. Mule it's considered to be a large animal for the purpose of determining its carrying capacity. Doesn't matter. Oh wait, hold on. I did need to finish this. Reskinned as baby rhinoceros. Again, just so that way we can make our players feel bad if they decide to go all murder hobo and not try and find another way to do this. So actually, wait, hold on. We can just start this one fresh because it doesn't have any sort of like charge or anything. Yeah, all of them can charge except for the babies. So here's what we'll say. Babies will stick to one other of their pod at all times and will simply use hooves on whatever the adult they're whatever adult they're clinging to is attacking. They'll just try and lay it on there, and like I just kind of imagine the babies think it's a fun little game, and they're just like, oh cool, mom's doing this, I guess I'll do it too. And that's gonna be real sad if they kill the baby before they kill the mom, because then I'm gonna like probably describe the mom as being really sad in like Rhino version or whatever. Really, ultimately, what I'm doing here is I'm setting up a situation where I'll have any number of opportunities to make my players feel bad about what they're doing. Hey Realm, this is so I have a long-term campaign project going on where we're writing an entire campaign module that'll take players from levels 1 to 10. And at this point in time, we're starting a new chapter. We kind of finished up the last section of the campaign, and we're starting a new chapter, the next section of this campaign. And right now, we're just kind of going through and figuring out what the enemies our players will be facing are. And the environment is sort of a plains, a prairie type of area, Serengeti type of area. And it's a city that's kind of been, it's a post-apocalyptic world, so the city has just kind of been left to nature to return to it. And so we're basically just coming up with all kinds of wild animals that might be territorial and or aggressive for our players to have to deal with. And so the first portion of this chapter is going to be them dealing with rhinos. And I love the sort of moral ambiguity that's involved in that because of the real world connotations of players just running through and massacring an entire herd of rhinos. I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be a really good way to just put their heads spinning and make them question whether or not they're the good or the bad guys. So I always feel bad. I always feel like I must sound like I absolutely despise my players because I constantly put them in situations where I'm like trying to make them feel bad and trying to make them question things. And I feel like I sort of paint myself unfairly as being a very adversarial. Oh wait, no, we can leave that there. A very adversarial DM. But I just don't like every campaign ever, every D&D group ever eventually becomes a group of murder hobos that just run around and kill everything. Like that absolutely happens, even if it doesn't stay like that permanently. Every group spends time doing that. And if they're gonna do that, that's fine. But I feel like doing that, like I can't let the opportunity go to not make them question whether or not that's an appropriate way to live life, right? Because when we think about that in a real world context, what a horrible person to be. You know, I'm an adventurer. Anytime there's a complex situation in front of me, I utilize a blade and or a gun to handle the situation. It's like, oh, so what you're saying is you're a monster, right? It's like, and so suddenly we play D&D and suddenly it's okay to be a monster? I don't know about that. So I always like to just like utilize any opportunity I can to make them think about like, well, is this actually what we should do? Should we handle it this way? And even if they choose yes, then it's like I'm gonna have fun making them feel like dicks about it. So that's just how I roll, baby. That's how I roll as a DM. That's my dealio. I'm gonna do this to section 1. A lot of times I'll even like give the sections little like subtitles and everything, but I haven't thought about that part of it yet, so I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna make sure I'm doing all of this. So all right, so we are gonna continue finding more monsters and everything, but as is per the usual, I have to make pity whistles, so we're at about an hour. So I'm gonna go make sure my bladder doesn't rupture, and then I'll be right back. So it'll just be a minute or two. I'll leave you guys here with the music, and I'll be right back. I appreciate your patience, and I will see you very shortly. And we're back. All right, thank you for your patience. I appreciate it. My bladder always appreciates it. Say that every time because every time it's true, man. Every time it's true. Sitting here having to do like I feel like there's an extra amount of pressure when you're like sitting there having to do the potty dance, right? When you're even when you're like sitting down and you know we only have the bust, you know, of myself on camera. There's always like this like desperate attempt to hold still when you're like sitting there having to do the potty dance, right? Because like your legs are jiggling and it's like, oh man, if I look like I'm vibrating on screen or if I'm shaking the floor and therefore the desk and therefore my camera, oh, it's going to be awkward, especially when people realize what's going on, that I'm being basically just a child about it and trying to hold in my whiz. So and that was when he decided to start talking about going to the bathroom for like 5 minutes. Probably the worst part of his stream. All right. Anyway, let's go ahead and start working on section 2 here. So section 2, all right, like just like with section 1, we'll go ahead and think about what our overall challenges ought to be for everything. So again, everything's kind of centered around a medium difficulty battle for a certain number of enemies, right? So for our boss of this section of this chapter, the boss of this section of this chapter of this campaign, I structure things as though it were naturally a bulleted list, right? When I'm doing these things, like when I think about it, like these bulleted lists are only like within bullets of like an overall conceptual list of bulleted items, right? Because it's like the campaign is broken into, you know, 10 chapters, right? A chapter for each level, right? And so within there's all those bullets. But then when we think about it in a broader sense, right, I have my world map that I have partitioned into hexes, and each hex is like, if I have the time in my life, right, each hex, my intent is for there to be a campaign that exists in each hex, right? And there's hundreds of hexes there, so I'll never actually accomplish that. But like that's always in my mind. That's like if I were to ever achieve anything in my life, it doesn't even matter if no one else cares. To me, if I were to do that and successfully do that in my life, I would consider my life 100% perfectly lived. 100%. I would look at that and I'd be like, no one else cares. Which means that everyone else can suck it because this is the most important thing I've ever done with my life. I would 100% feel that way. 100%. But even then, it's like that's a bulleted list, right? Because I can think about it as like, yeah, there's this big list of like 200 like to-do items that can be checked off to finish this forever project. Oh boy. At any rate. So let's go ahead and think about again what enemies we're going to have here in our second section. So our boss is going to be, as always, one of these enemies should be roughly a medium difficulty battle. So one of these enemies, so the boss should be roughly 650 experience points. We're going to go with 700, and that'll bring us to a challenge rating. That's what, a challenge rating 3, right? So if we'll go ahead and bring that up there, we'll just filter. We'll keep the same filters because I want the same atmosphere to go. We'll just find something else. Why would you not automatically sort by challenge? Because it's doing it alphabetically, which I guess is a sensible way to sort things, but it's not the way that I wanted. Therefore, I'm going to be bothered by it. Wow. We're going to kind of be pigeonholed there if we're not willing to be flexible. We're going Jurassic Park, baby. No, I don't. I have such a difficult time with the dinosaurs in D&D because on the one hand, that's awesome. Like a dinosaur hunt is awesome. The problem that I have with it is that is such a distinct, such a specific atmosphere, such a specific tone. And that specific tone is Jurassic Park, right? It's such a specific thing that I feel like that warrants a very specific location. Like you just can't have dinosaur enemies intermingled with also, you know, just dealing with a standard lion or something like that, right? Because the dinosaurs immediately become the apex creatures of any environment they're in, right? Immediately they're the apex. So it's like, why would there be any other predators, any other aggressive animals in an environment with a dinosaur? It just doesn't, I just can't get it to work in my brain. So for me, like using dinosaurs has to be a very specific like Jurassic Park thing. Oh yes, you're going to this island which has dinosaurs, or at the very least, you're going to this particular jungle which has dinosaurs in it, right? Like it has to be its own thing. I can't ever bring myself to intermingle them, and I know that's kind of probably a personal problem, because if I were to actually do it, I'm sure my players would love it and think it's spectacular and want to keep with it all the time, but I just can't bring myself to do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. Well, okay, first let's see if there's a way to add in any other things. We can maybe add urban. Let's just broaden this up a little bit. Let's add urban and desert, which are very loose fits to this environment, but they could work depending on what options are available. So give us our challenge rating here again. Let's go to the end. We've added a couple options. We've added a giant scorpion and an amphisbaena. Scorpion I could see working. Amphisbaena, I'm not feeling it as much. I guess, well, I mean, I guess that could kind of work. It's snakes, right? It's a two-headed snake, if I'm remembering this properly. Like an amphisbaena, it's not going to give us a description here, but it's a two-headed snake. So we could do that. That's not too out of what I'm trying to stick with, which is like real animals. I mean, like, because we're talking about like a giant or a mutated version of these animals could be fine. So a two-headed snake could be fine. We could do that, and then like have this section be like introducing a lot of snakes and stuff. Do we have a fair selection of snake options around here? Giant swimmer, giant spider, giant. Dire wolf, brown, war horse, swarm of insects. Yeah, let's see. Swarm of rats, swarm of ravens. Fingers, giant wasp, swarm of insects, Yeah, let's see. We're not having a lot of options, so I'm just not sure I'm feeling that. Yeah, I'm not really feeling that, and I'm also not really feeling the giant scorpion. That's a little too desert for this environment, I think. So let's broaden a little more. Beast is what we're trying to stick to for the most part, but I could see plant being an option as well. That would make sense if we had some sort of like sentient plants. Let's add them to the mix. And we'll go ahead and keep this a bit broader. And that did absolutely nothing to help us. Great. Well, it's perfect. That's wonderful. I love it. Man, it's going to make me have to like invent something. So at this point in time, probably what I'll end up doing then is let's go ahead and add... Let's add Monstrosity. Because a lot of times what we can do with monstrosities is they're close enough to some sort of beast, right, that we can pretty easily just sort of like do a reskin, and like the stats and attack options that they present are still sensible enough that we can then just like reflavor it to being a monster or being a beast, and it'll work out okay. Yeah, see, like something like this, okay? So Lucrata. Lucrata? I've never actually said that one out loud, I don't think. These guys, keen smell, has advantage on wisdom, checks that rely on smell. Got attacks with its hooves, it can take the disengage. Mimicry, can mimic animal sounds and humanoid voices. Rampage, reduce creature to 0 hit points, the melee attack on its turn. Can take a bonus action to move up to have its speed and make an attack with its hooves. Multi-attack, bite, and hooves. So what my immediate thought with this guy is it doesn't look like it, but we can just reflavor it a little bit. And these guys, what I'm thinking, let me just quickly look between these guys, and maybe some of the other enemies that are around. Let me look at the list here. Something like maybe a hippogriff could work. Beak and claw, exactly what I'm looking for. Old croaker, tiger, spider king. What does an allosaurus do? Bite and claw, that could work. Centaur. Giant elk, giant boar. Attack, pike. If we just like don't use those, my thought is what I'm looking for and what I'm thinking is based on the stats that they're doing, we can have like a herd of wild horses move into town, right? And we can utilize them with other things that have like, yeah, see, like we've got the war horse here, and we can use them with like, wasn't there somewhere in here? Oh gosh, wasn't there giant elk somewhere in here as well? And wolf spider, swarm of blah blah blah, fiendish giant spider. I thought giant elk was somewhere one of the options. Elk, we have standard elk. Maybe I passed over it, but yeah, like we can use the elk, right? Because they've got ram and hooves, so it's like we can use that. It's kind of loose fit, and like everything is gonna be like reskinned rather than naturally being it there. But the stats will be sensible enough, and it'll work. Yeah, because we've got draft horse, we got war horse. And I think these ones will be usable based on what our experience point breakdown is going to be for what we need for the different challenges. I think that'll work. And this can and our where did he go? What's this guy? Yeah, that's not quite it. Got what I didn't really remember what that was, and I saw the antlers. I was like, oh wait, is that like a deer? No, it is not. It's far from it. But yeah, if we like utilize this dude here as just like king mega horse or whatever, and then like, you know, and that's the boss, and the rest of them are just like horses. We could even start to sort of intermingle all the different monsters and stuff too, right? Because we're having our players returning to the same city multiple times, so it doesn't really necessarily make sense for all of the enemies to disappear unless we're having like, you know, the rhinos are in one part of the city, unless we just do different parts of the city, which I had toyed with, and I haven't actually finalized exactly how I want to set it up, although now that I'm thinking about it, I was leaning towards separate parts of the city. So we'll just go ahead and have like this part of the city is just overrun with horses, and then if our players go to like revisit parts of the city, then they revisit some of the enemies and all that kind of stuff, right? So I think this works. I think this will be fun. I also think it'll just be really fun with these guys because I think these are cool enemies with some kind of interesting stuff. Like I like that kicking retreat thing. I think that's really cool. Lucrata attacks with its hooves. It can take the disengage action as a bonus action. I like that idea of it utilizing that if it gets down to like half health to try and like move in, attack, and move out, or even just as a baseline. That's what it'll do. Like it'll charge in, attack with its hooves, and then run back, you know, and get like some distance going, and it'll just kind of do that. So I think this is a really fun enemy to use, but I think because of just how wretched this thing looks, there's a limited number of places where you can utilize them. So I think if we can reskin and utilize it, that's something that I'm definitely into as an idea. So I think that's good. I think that's good, and I think that's the option I'm gonna take. So let's go ahead and start by saying the Leu Crata. Let's see if I can spell it right. Which we all know is that by now everyone here is aware that that is. Oh, that's a big if I can spell it right. Leu Crata. It's not gonna tell me, but I'm pretty sure that was it. Of course, I'm pretty sure that was it. That's why I tried spelling it that way. Leu Crata. Yep, got it. All right. Let's go ahead and wait really quickly. Take our screenshot here of this. Copy that because we're gonna need to put that into our notes. The Lucrata, 700 XP. And we'll do reskinned as a big ol' horse. Well, we'll clarify that. Big old wild horse. The big old wild horse. Bada bing, bada boom. Alright, so we got that, and so now we'll put him in our enemy stats and strats here. Alright, so I'm gonna put down that little strategy that I had thought. We'll say will constantly utilize makes 2 attacks, one with its bite and one with its hooves. Constantly utilize. Okay, here's what we're gonna do. We'll say use this order of operations for most every turn with it. We go in here. Charge after, we'll just say closest enemy. So it'll go in after the closest enemy. Charge after closest enemy. We'll say use multi-attack. Use multi-attack. Multi-attack, bite first, then hooves. After attacking with hooves, utilize kicking retreat to build space again. And we'll say repeat. We'll say targeting same creature until it's unconscious, then switch to the next closest enemy. Boom. Do it that way. Perfect. I think that's great. And then we'll also say, so when it gets, what does that rampage work again? When the Lucrata reduces a creature to 0 hit points with a melee attack on its turn, it can take a bonus action to move up to half its speed and make an attack with its hooves. Okay, yeah, and so we'll use utilize rampage whenever possible during the above scenario. And then the one other thing I'm going to do with this thing, I'm going to have this thing be a little bit smarter. Its intelligence, I mean, clearly its intelligence is a bit higher up there, so we're going to have it be a bit smarter. We'll say if reduced to 1/4 health, will utilize kicking retreat to actually we'll just say will try to run utilizing kicking retreat if necessary to do so. So once it gets down to a quarter health, it's gone. It's out. It's not interested in being part of that business anymore. It's like, okay, yeah, no, this is right now I'm experiencing myself dying, and I would like to not do that anymore. So it'll just run, which I can't blame it. I mean, that's a pretty sensible train of thought, right? I mean, I feel like most of us would be of a like mindset in that scenario. So it doesn't address this stuff does not address the keen smell and the mimicry. But those are two things that I will probably minimally use, if at all. One, because the scenarios probably won't rely on it. And two, because we are reskinning it as a horse. And these two things, especially mimicry, just don't really make the same sense for a horse as it does for this creature. I mean, keen smell is sensible enough, but I don't know that there's really going to be a situation where keen smell is going to make a difference, because we're just flavoring it as a horse that isn't trying to hide, nor is it trying to hunt. It's just present, and it'll be territorial. If players are getting up in its space, then I'll be like, oh, and it'll just, like, you know, along with its herd, just try and lay a bit of a beat down on our players. So that's perfect. That's all we need. So now let's start working our way down. So our leaders, so if we're looking at 650 experience points, our leaders should be worth somewhere around, you know, that 300 to 325 is mathematically what it is, which is tough because that puts us right between our 200 and our 450 ranges here for the next two options. And as I described before, I am definitely of a mind to always trend towards less experience points when it's anything other than the boss, because then we can just use more of them, and that makes the fight more difficult than it would be if we went for the higher challenge rating and did fewer enemies. It is always when the experience points are roughly equal, when the challenge rating like added up or whatever is roughly equal, the option with more enemies will always be tougher for players to handle, because they will always be taking more damage in that scenario, right? Unless we're talking about like a Tarrasque versus 10 swarm of insects or something like that, right? You know, in that situation, obviously, okay, the Tarrasque is more powerful to the necessary level, compared to the insects, that it'll be the more dangerous. But as a general rule, right, like more enemies is always more difficult than a single enemy, because players will pretty much always be taking more damage that way, even if it's in smaller increments, right? It's more of a death by 1,000 cuts situation, but it ends up being more difficult. The enemies to the players will have an easier time strategizing and actually like doing intelligent things that will challenge and endanger the players, right? And that is kind of what we're going for here. Like, we're trying to present dangers and difficulties for our players. Otherwise, we're not actually playing a game where there's risk. We're just writing a story. And even then, it's not a very good one, because if there aren't stakes, then there's not really a story to be told. So at any rate, so for these guys, again, we're somewhere between if we want to have like our 2 to 3 enemies there, we have to either go less or more for our 350 or 325, and so I'm going to trend towards less, because really when you do the math on that, so if we're at 200 experience points, 2, 4, 6, that pretty much puts us at our 3 amount, which is perfectly in line with what our goal is here. So we're going to go ahead and do exactly that, and find ourselves that should be a challenge rating 1 enemy that fits what we're looking for here. So 1, Harpy, Hippogriff, Ice Spider Lion, Old Croaker, Reduced Threat, Keratin, Sangzor, what the heck? Charge, Sure-Footed, Ram. I mean, that could work. That could function pretty well. I don't know what it's supposed to look like, but if we're just going to reskin it as a horse anyway, then hey, who cares, right? That'll work just fine. Giant Eagle, Giant, all giant. Dionyscus. Yeah, no. Death Dog, gosh, that's just such an ominous title. Look at that guy. Look at that guy. It's just a pup that needs a little love, right? It's probably been neglected. Just needs a little bit of love. What pup doesn't get better when you give it a little love? You know, that's the situation here. All right. Yeah, let's go ahead and, for these guys, let's go ahead and go back. Let's go ahead and utilize our Sangzor here, which, like, as someone who has spent plenty of time looking through Curse Strategy, you'd think I'd have a clear idea in my brain about what it is. But gosh, there's so many enemies, and all of them are made up words. Who's got the brain space to freaking get all of it memorized perfectly forever, right? So it's, I don't know. We're just reskinning it as a horse anyway, so who cares? Copy that. Horses don't really ram, but I think you can make a case that they're capable of doing it, and for the sake of D&D and just trying to get what we need in here, it'll do. It'll do just fine. So challenge rating 1. Capitalize that R, because it will bother me if I don't do it. Sangzor, was that how it was spelled? Did I do it? And did I do it? Or did it? Oh, wait, hold on. What did I do? What did I? Oh, I just went. Yeah, there it is. Sangzor. Boom, 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 boom. Simram. Yeah, exactly. I appreciate that insight. Yeah, that's definitely a horse thing to do. They will definitely headbutt you. They'll definitely do it. Sometimes it's playful, and sometimes it's out of irritation. Horses are sassy creatures. They are sassy animals, and they're hilarious. I think they're phenomenal from a distance. When I was back in the day when I was in the veterinary field, I never had any interest in working with horses, because while they are hilarious, they can be real sassy buttholes. Like, they can be such jerks about things. They love that. Yeah, exactly. They get jealous. They practically pull pranks half the time. And they're hilarious, but oh my gosh, they're sassy, they're jerks. And they're touchy too. Like, if you do one thing wrong, they'll try and kick you. Like, they don't have any inhibitions about hurting you. Like, they don't have a, like, oh, well, I like you, so maybe I won't hurt you so bad. No, they're just like, you made me mad this exact second. I'm going to wreck your world. And that's what they do. They're wonderful creatures, and I never, ever want to work with them. They like, I'll admit it. They scare me. They scare me. Like, I enjoyed back when I was in the veterinary field, which I'm glad I'm not there anymore. I don't really hold any regrets, but there were still plenty of good memories when I was in that field. Um, and I always liked working with cows. I liked working just like farm production animals in general. I liked cows, I liked sheep, I liked pigs. Pigs maybe a little less so just because how stinky they are. But like cows, I really liked cows. Cows are funny. Like they're funny and they're not nearly as like impulsively aggressive as horses are. So like cows were fun. Cows were really fun. But horses, yeah, they're sassy sons of bitches, and I don't know. That's like when you have to work with an animal that could potentially kill you. Sass is not really a personality trait that I'm stoked to have from them. Like that's not my bag, you know? Like there's some people love it, and there is some darn good money in it because people will pay top dollar to have their horses taken care of. But the flip side of it is there's also a lot of stress there. If you do something wrong for their horses, then whoo, Lord help you. The world of horses is just, there's a specific, both within the animals and within the owners, there's a very specific set of politics you have to understand and be willing to navigate if you want to work with horses. And I just was never interested in that. Maybe he was getting territorial to a horse. Oh no. Yeah. No. Horses don't mess around. Horses play for keeps. Horses are like the Ender Wiggin of the animal world, where they're like, they'll win when they enter a fight, they will win the current fight and every fight to come. In that one instant, they will finish you, put you down, and make sure that the fight never happens again, is what they'll do. And it's like, I respect it, which is why I'm giving them distance. Reskinned as horses. Boom, 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 boom. There we go. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, it's not like I don't hate horses or hold any animosity towards them. I just, like I say, I respect them, and it will just always, for the rest of my life, give them their distance. Like, I'm just not even someone who particularly gets excited about, like, riding horses. You know, it's like, I totally get the appeal, and, like, there is a certain, like, I do actually, within my brain, there's, like, a certain appeal to the aesthetic of, like, being a rancher, right, and, like, spending your days kind of just, like, riding through fields on horses. Like, I get it, I recognize it, but in terms of how I want to live my life, nope, just not interested. Zebras and donkeys, yes, they, donkeys, zebras especially, actually, zebras can be mean, but I always imagine that's just a product of their environment. I mean, Serengeti is not a kind place to grow up, regardless of what species you are. Like, that is a brutal place to be. And then donkeys are just, I feel like donkeys are more so like the gross kind of mean. Like, they're that friend that will absolutely belch and fart in your face. And I mean, donkeys will also kill animals that come into their turf. So, you know, this is why a lot of times you'll see like a donkey or a mule in with a lot of other animals, because they'll serve as like a protector of whatever other herd they're in, because they're like, if they view themselves as equals with whatever the rest of the herd is, then they'll protect it, and they will do a darn good job of it too. Animals are just fascinating, which is why I was in the veterinary field in the first place. Like, I love animals, and I still, on like an academic sense, am fascinated by animals. I love animals, and I loved learning about sort of the biologies and the similarities and differences between animals. It was the human side of veterinary field that just did not appeal to me. The concept of having to prove myself through like 70 to 80 hour work weeks, earning pennies as just like a, you know, as you know, like an intern and a resident and all that stuff, to eventually maybe one day be able to possibly look into buying a practice when someone finally decided they wanted to retire, all the while having to be in that cutthroat environment of proving that I was the better one, that, you know, I was the better vet compared to anyone else, rather than being in a more collaborative sense. Like, you can find ways to be collaborative, and certainly many of them do, but there's always this like low grade cutthroat, because it's like you'll have 10 veterinarians working in that one practice, and only one or two of them can become owner or part owner of that practice one day. And I just didn't like it. I wasn't happy. I wasn't able to do creative things like this with my time, because everything was all about reading up on like new journal articles, trying to stay ahead of the curve to like keep yourself competitive. And I just not into it. I just get rightfully. And I say, yeah, don't need to reload a donkey. I like that. I like that a lot, actually. That's a really good anecdote that really describes it pretty accurately. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. Yeah, I could talk a lot about animals in my time in the veterinary field. As short lived as that time was, there's a lot of stories involved in it, but I'd rather do creative things, which is exactly why I left the field, because I'd rather do creative things and enjoy my time, every day. That's why I'm here, baby. Why I'm here and not there. So what the heck was I saying, Zor? Yeah, this is the thing. It's gonna be a horse. A horse, of course. Yeah. So yeah, charge. So yeah, we'll just say flavored as. Well, I already have it flavored as horses. We know that. We'll just say we'll charge the nearest enemy that isn't already under attack by one of its herd mates. So like they'll charge in, but they'll find something that isn't already being attacked. Like they'll try and split up their efforts a little bit. Is kind of what my idea is. And then we'll say always use the ram attack. It's okay to sometimes describe it as using hooves, or as using hooves instead of headbutting, because like like mechanically speaking, it's not a whole lot different, right? Does bludgeoning damage when it attacks. So ram hooves, not really a big deal. So we can just kind of do that to make sure that the flavor text matches what we're trying to do. Yeah, exactly. I think that's something that I've learned. Like, granted, I'm still a pretty young individual, right? But at 30 years old, I've lived enough to recognize that like money is only meaningful up to the point that you have enough to do the things you want to do. If you're a sane, well-adjusted individual, there are plenty of individuals who are obsessed with getting more and more money, and that's why we have billionaires that ruin everything for everyone. My personal politics aside, I think most average people find, as long as they're attentive and know what they want out of life, eventually find that there is sort of like a point. There's a point of diminishing returns with finances, and it's usually a lot sooner than people expect. Like to the point where it's like earning more money after a certain point just will not make you happier. The better thing for me, the thing that's more important, is having time. Having time in my life to do the things that I like and be with the people that I care about, right? Like that's the important stuff. And it's like, so it's like for me, could I be earning money if I had a part-time job on top of my daily job and did that instead of doing this? Absolutely, I could. But if like I don't know what I would spend that money on, because other than, maybe a bigger house that has an in-home gym rather than having to go to the gym, other than that, I don't really need more space. I don't need more stuff in my life. I've got my computer that I can do my writing on, and it's like, so earning more money, what would that do for me? Already, clearly, I've earned enough that I can do what I want to do. So it just like, it kind of gets to a point, and I've just, as young as I still am, on the grand scheme of things, having already figured that one out, I feel really happy that I've kind of clicked into that and figured that out, because now at 30, I've still got enough like youth and vitality to go out and enjoy my life, recognizing that that's what I should be doing with my time. I shouldn't be working myself to the bone to hopefully retire at 65 and then be all like, great, now I don't have anything to do with my life, with my days, because I don't have hobbies. I don't remember what it's like to have hobbies. I don't have the physical ability to go out and do half of the stuff that I wish I would have done with my life. And so now I'm just like sitting here watching TV and wasting away, right? It's like I don't want that. I would rather work until I die, but in a way that gives me the free time to keep up with the other things that I want to do. I would rather do that. Like, that makes so much more sense to me. But maybe that's my youth talking. Maybe I'll reach 70 years old with no retirement and be like, oh boy, that was a regretful thing. But I mean, let's face it. Look at the economy and where it's going. None of us under 50 are ever retiring. Let's be real here. Unless something drastically changes, it's not happening. Best figure out how to have how to have that longevity in life now. And best figure out how you're going to be able to survive working for your entire life and have fun in the meantime, because there's just not going to be that large influx of free time at the end of it, right? It's just not. I just don't see it happening. Not for most of us, especially the way technology keeps improving. Like, we keep getting in more in debt, and we keep living longer. It's like, boy, that is not a recipe for lots of functional free time. Yeah, no, like, I hear you entirely. That story is kind of, I see that in my dad a lot too. He retired, and he actually, I mean, it worked out well because he retired, and then just coincidentally, my ma got sick for a while, so he was able to help her through all that, But now that she's recovered, and he doesn't have that to occupy his time, like, he got a request from one of his buddies who's still working to go and work for his buddy to help him out and help his buddy, finish off towards retirement. And my dad happily did that. And I was like, if that's not an indicator of how retirement just really isn't actually, like, full-blown retirement isn't actually what people want, I don't know what is. My dad actively chose a full-time job over full-time retirement, right? Like, that's what he chose to do. And I'm like, boy, oh boy, like, what a life. I'm glad I'm not going to rely on that. I'd much rather do this, where it's like, yeah, I have to work part-time. I don't have, like, full all the time off, but here I am writing stuff and streaming. Like, that's what I want to do with my time. And now I'm young enough and I've got the energy to do it, rather than just, like, use my time off to sleep in the recliner. Not that there's anything wrong with that sometimes, but that's not the life for me. I guess that's what I'm saying. That's not the life for me. If it is the life for you, don't let me convince you that you're wrong or anything like that, by all means. But I just don't see myself being happy in that form of life. I like doing this much better. I like doing this much, much better. This is it. This is it. Yeah, exactly. Getting part-time jobs and stuff like that. Yeah, and yeah, that's just what they do. And I think a lot of the part of it, like, I'm definitely getting derailed, but this is an interesting topic, and it's like, it's fun kind of discussing these things and pondering about them. Like, I think the thing that happens to a lot of people who have lived in this work culture of being in an office 40 plus hours a week for 40 years of their lives, I think they genuinely kind of forget how to have hobbies and how to do fun stuff with their free time, right? They kind of get to this point where they're like, like, all they had time to do for 40 years is, like, watch TV and maybe read a book for an hour in the evening before going to bed. So, like, that's what they do now with all of their free time. They're like, oh, well, I like watching TV, I guess I'll do that. So they sit and they watch the TV all day long, or they read books all day long, which, go figure, we're calling reading books all day long a bad thing, but let's be real. Like, you can't live 20 years doing nothing but reading books all day long. And so I think they just forget how to have hobbies. I think they forget how to, and, like, one thing I think for my dad is I think he forgot how to be bad at something, right? Because he spent all of his life in the same career field, so he got really good at that. And so now that he's got time to explore hobbies, but he hasn't done that in so long, he just doesn't remember how to be bad at something. So he'll try to do something, like he's tried to learn a couple instruments and it just hasn't worked out, because he starts off not being good at the instrument, and he gets frustrated because he's just forgotten how to be bad at something because he hasn't done it for like 30 years. Last time he was bad at something was when he first got into the field that he then spent his entire career in. So it just, like, he just doesn't remember how to do those things. And I think that that's just kind of one of the products of when you devote full-time or more of your life to one thing, you kind of get so enraptured in that you forget how to do other things. Like, you just forget how to approach doing other things. And I think it's too bad. And I think it's something that I'm definitely going to do everything I can to avoid. I like this so much better. I try new things all the time with my life because I have the time to do it. And so I go out and I do that. I try new things. I mean, like, I'm a kickboxer, a rock climber, like, I've got, I've got all these things that I've done that I'm, like, garbage at compared to other people, but, like, I'm learning how to do those. And now, like, with streaming, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm terrible at this. I'm horrible at this, but it's like, hey, I'm used to being bad at things, so I'll just keep trying it because it's fun. And I don't want to lose that creativity, that curiosity about life. And I feel like that's what working long-term does, is it just kind of robs people of their ability to be curious because they just don't practice it. They don't have time to practice it anymore. And I think that's a shame. I think it's a crying shame. Renovating, yeah, doing house repairs and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. exactly. That's my parents spent their entire lives kind of doing that. They would buy like fixer-upper homes. Like I as a child lived in like 3 different houses because they would do that. They would like get a new home and they would do that, and like weekends would be spent working on the house, which is great and all. But then when you get too old to do that, it's like, all right, well, and that's where the concept of like, okay, you get all this free time when you're 65, but you don't have the energy to do all that fixer upper stuff, even though now you really have the time to actually be a house flipper, right? It's like you don't have the energy to do it. You don't have the physicality to do it. Better to find a way to do that now while you're young. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a complex thing, and certainly I'm probably oversimplifying a lot of the facets of it. But yeah, it's like, yeah, I don't know. I think it's something that is worth thinking about that that people just don't think about. Holy crap. That's an impressive number. Yeah, see, the thing for me is I lived in that many houses as a kid, and from there on, it's just been a stream of apartments because I can't afford a house. I can't afford a down payment. My parents are always like, why don't you have a house? I'm like, because I've got like $5,000 to my name, and that's not enough for a down payment unless I want to be broke when I have that house. Be like an empty fixer-upper in the middle of Drugville, USA. Like, yeah, if I want to move to Gary, Indiana, maybe I can find property that'll afford that, but no one wants to be there. Everyone's trying to get out of that place. Like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, everything's all apartments nowadays. And maybe that's part of the reason why I have the time to do, other hobbies and stuff, because there's no house repair, there's no house upkeep that I ever have to do with my life. Mowing the lawn, not a thing. Fixing the roof, not a thing. Fixing appliances, not even a thing. If I tried to do that, my landlords would get pissed at me. So it's like, all right, I'll use all my free time to do other stuff. So, what am I doing here? Let's get our war horses in here. 100 XP. I think these guys are there. Hey, where's my bar? All right. Oh, fine. We'll do it that way. I don't know why my my menu bar is not coming up here. All right. Well, we'll just paste that in there. There we go. Yeah, I don't know why my bar's not coming up. Will it come up on the other screen? Nope. I guess I don't get a taskbar anymore. All right. It was fun while it lasted. I wonder if we can like alt tab our way into it here. Look at there's all the background stuff. Oh. We can start menu it, right? Nope, no start menu. Well, my computer has decided we are done with all that noise. Oh, it looks like it's frozen somehow. That's exciting. Well, okay. We'll just see if it figures its crap out here while we talk about war horses. Wait until it didn't get dinged by taxes. Man, so many people live their lives avoiding taxes. I always think that's kind of funny. Like, boy, what a way to spend your energy. Growth and fix that up so every 2 years. Which would increase by like 48. Yeah, I mean that's like the way to do it if you're gonna really dive into houses. Like the thing that's interesting about houses that I always find is like people always talk about like that increases your net worth and your overall value and everything like that. But like the thing about net worth related to houses is it's kind of like the value that you add to your name by having a house is really only worthwhile for buying other houses, right? Like if you're happy in your home, then other than like in 30 years when you pay off your mortgage or whatever your agreement is, it's not actually like increasing your day-to-day life, right? Because instead of paying rent, you pay your mortgage, and the only reason you'll sell your house is to buy another house, because you can't sell your house and then not have a place to live, right? So unless you can have multiple homes that you're flipping up, like it's an interesting thing. I don't know. Maybe that's just like me being naive about it because I've never had the opportunity to go into it. But why won't you give me my bar? I wanted to go back. Okay, it's war horse. 100 beast unaligned. 100 experience points. That should be about right. Yeah, because we want about 5 of them to be a medium difficulty battle here. So that'll be about right. Challenge rating 1/2. I want to at least finish these. I had set out today thinking that I would try and finish all of the enemies in this whole chapter. We've gotten 2 out of 6 sections done because I'm chatty and I love overanalyzing things. But honestly, you know what? I'm having a good time, so who cares? It's not like I'm under a deadline. I'm not doing this for an employer or anything. I'm doing this because it's fun, baby. War horse. And luckily, this time we don't need to reskin it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you want to go into like using houses as a way to earn income, like that having multiple houses then changes that conversation, right? Where they end up being actually like a value that contributes to your income and bottom line, renting things out. The risk then, my parents actually did dabble in renting out houses for a little bit. And the thing that they found is that unless you're willing to be like a hard ass landlord or something like that, it's hard to make significant amounts. It's hard to make significant amounts when it comes to repairs unless you know that you're going to have good tenants. So it's like, yeah, if you've got good tenants, then like they can cover the mortgage, right? And that's great, right? That's great. But like, then you need to charge even more to actually have it be an income. Otherwise, it's just more chores because it's more house upkeep. Or you can pay like a contracting service to handle the rent for you, in which case the income is really small. And it's just like, there's a lot of, I guess like what it comes down to is there's a lot of additional complications when it comes to having multiple properties and renting them out that for a lot of people, myself included, really deter you from thinking that that would be a fun, easy way to make extra income. Like that turns into exactly, effort and time versus cost of income. That's exactly it. Because then it turns into a thing where it's like, boy, if I'm spending this much time, I'd rather just have less. Like, if I have to mow 2 lawns now, I'd rather just have one less house and a little less income at that point in time. So it's like, but it's like, again, that's the type of thing where it's like every person has a different perspective on it. So it's like, by all means, if that's something you're interested in, don't listen to me. Don't listen to me. Hey, Demon Knight, how's it going? Doing all right. We're bouncing between the wisdoms of retirement and home ownership, as well as writing D&D. 2 super related topics. Because I'm clearly the king of staying focused. And apparently my taskbar is just never coming back. It's just gone. It's gone. All gone. Okay, well, here's what we'll do then. Let's, at least for now, let's just get Warhorse. We're just gonna always do this one. Like the Warhorse, that's what they'll do. I feel like the horses will just charge in and they'll call it good. Bored out of your mind? Man, we've all been there. That's right. Just home ownership is basically, it's empty. Yep, you can do it. And the reason why it's that simple is because very few, I'm not going to say no because never say never. And there's going to be one guy that comes in and be like, oh, I'll do that to my players. But most DMs are not going to bother with the complexities of making you determine rent and tenants and upkeep of the house. It's going to be like, hey, you got property. Great. That's your lair. That's your house. That's great. I once heard an idea. I can't remember where I heard it, but it cracked me up. The idea of there being like an NPC that exists in the world that like if players start to wonder, they can investigate, but an NPC that owns a castle and like will sell it to like, well, not sell it, like he'll legitimately sell it for large sums of money to an adventuring crew. And then when they eventually don't come back for like a month, just like goes back in there, changes the locks and resells it because the adventuring party keeps getting themselves killed or like traveling off to nowhere and never coming back because they find other places to be. And I've always thought that would be a really funny NPC because you could use that situation to be like players, if they're gone for a week, they come back and find that the locks have been changed in their house, and then they go find the person who sold it, and then there's like that awkward situation of he's like, oh, I thought you died. I just went ahead and reclaimed it. And I just always thought that would be really funny. I can't remember where I heard that. That's not an original idea. But hey, look, it's back. We got the taskbar back. Hooray, it's a triumphant day. All right. We've got enough time that I'm going to just really quickly, but now OneNote is there we go, now OneNote's back. So now we're going to, OneNote is misbehaving a little bit here, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead and try and get one last thing in here, because we're getting close to where I'm going to take my breaking point here, my slightly longer break, so that way I don't, as was the issue beforehand, so that my bladder doesn't burst and all that stuff. So I'm going to have us quickly finish off this particular segment here, and I think it's ready made for us because we have, if I'm remembering, we've got Riding Horse. We'll just go ahead and use Riding Horse now. We'll just take a screenshot of that bad boy there, copy that, paste that in there. Simplified it for players. They bought a bar and did the income stuff, told them simply, this is what you make, and just explain it. Yeah, that's a fair way to do it. Like, honestly, if you're gonna get into the nitty gritty, that's like probably the balance to strike. I think that makes perfect sense. Use skeletons. Yeah, there you go. That's true. If you're like a necromancer or something like that, then you got a free undead army. I like the idea of like someone becoming a necromancer or a lich or whatever, just so they have an undead army of people that just like are groundskeepers. And it's like, so everyone's like all terrified that they're going to be some sort of evil dude. And he's like, no, I just got tired of doing lawn work. I don't know. I like that idea. Oh boy. Okay, let's see here. So riding horse. So many hoof attacks. Boom. There we go. That's all the strategy that you need to do for that. I mean, honestly, realistically, you really just don't need to do anything. NPC was exactly that. I love it. I love it. I use NPC. It sounds like you do the same thing that I do, where you use NPCs to use up all of the clever ideas that you have, but don't get to indulge because you're the DM, and anytime you get pigeonholed as the DM, you're the forever DM, and you never get to play again. So you just use NPCs to do all of the wacky ideas that you have as a player. Use them for mining and housework. Yep, legit. I like it. I like it a lot. All right, riding horse. Then worth 50 XP. That's pretty close to our 10s. And there we go. So now we got a portion of this town that'll be completely overrun with horses. Perfect. All right. So with that, I'm gonna take the break, which is just about time because boy, oh boy, I'm feeling that bladder getting full there. Necromancer bar with gold plated, dual-studded skeletons. This is bad. I like it. I like that a lot. That is a cool aesthetic. I like that a lot. That's fun stuff. But yeah, so I'm going to take a break. It'll be probably about 15 minutes, and then I'll be back. And when I come back, we're switching over to video games. I'll be continuing my playthrough of Neverwinter Nights, which is just going to go on forever because that game is super long, super involved, and I'm incapable of not reading every single thing that's there. But yeah, if you want to see me like playing a D&D game as opposed to just writing one, I should stick around. Like I said, I'll be back in like 15 minutes. We'll do that. I'm going to switch this over to just chatting here really quick. And we're just going to do the thing for the YouTube VOD here where I do all of my, like, you know, sales pitches and everything like that, and just talk about all the different places you can find me. If you want the really abbreviated version, you can find all the links I'm about to talk about in the About page of my Twitch page, or you can find them in the video description below if you're watching this on YouTube. But thank you to everyone who stopped by. First off, whether you're watching live or watching the VOD afterwards, I appreciate it. It means a lot to me that you're showing interest and having a good time in the stuff that I'm doing. It makes it really fun to have these conversations. Like, this is really fun conversations, even if they're off topic. I love it. Like, that's why I do the stream. If I wanted to just be productive, I wouldn't stream. I would just write. So, no, I have a blast doing this stuff. It means a lot to me that you guys stop by. I appreciate it. If you like to stay connected, I do have a Discord server. You can get yourself, anyone's welcome there. If you like talking about D&D, homebrew stuff, if you like talking about video games, if you like, you know, seeing goofy pictures of my cat when I feel like posting them, Discord is a really good place. I try to stay really connected with my audience there. I have a lot of fun with it. The Discord's a fun place. I also use Discord to give announcements about when I'm going live or if there's changes to my streaming schedule. That's a good one to get connected with. If you're just interested in announcements about like when I'm going live and stuff like that, you can follow me on Twitter at EnviroStreams. I'll occasionally also do little anecdotes and share my thoughts as people do. Thought vomit on Twitter. I'll occasionally do that, but mostly I use that as an announcement thing for when I'm going live and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to just get little notifications, get buzzed when that's happening, you can follow me there. So that's an option available there. I also have an Instagram, EnviroBoyStreams. I talked today, especially we talked a lot about some of the things that I do not on stream. And if you're interested in that kind of stuff, Instagram's a really good place to sort of check that stuff out. I'll post videos of me doing kickboxing and me doing rock climbing, me having a cat that only has one eye, and she's adorable as it sounds, a one-eyed cat. She's absolutely precious. But yeah, so like Instagram's a really good place to get connected with all that. And then if you're not already watching on YouTube, I do have a YouTube channel. You can see all the VODs. Put all of them there so you can go all the way back and see all the different stuff that I've written, watch all the different games that I played, all that kind of stuff. Lots of good stuff there. And maybe one of these days I'll actually learn how to edit videos, and maybe I'll do like compilations and stuff on there too. It's in the back of my mind that I'll get it done, but you know, time and capability are limiting factors at the moment. But hey, maybe one day. So we got all of those things. The only other link just to mention, there's a donate page there. It is helpful when people donate. You know, it helps me. Like, you can't see it on stream because I have it set lower, but I just recently got a new mic, and it's like, you know, donations are really helpful in doing that kind of stuff. But really, you know, if you're wanting to support me, the best thing that you can do is like do all the like, comment, subscribe stuff. You know, tell a friend about the streams, have them stop by, and honestly, that's more helpful and more meaningful to me. You know, honestly, it's like saving up slowly. I'll buy my own stuff because I just have fun doing this. The part that's more meaningful to me is having people stop by and watch. You know, that's the fun stuff. That's the stuff that's flattering and meaningful to me. So just that's all you got to do, man. That's all you got to do if you want to support me, is just hang out. Come hang out when I go live, and I love it. I love it. So, all right. So those are all the links. If you're not going to stick around for gaming, that's totally fine. I'll just go over my schedule real quick. I try to stream every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So long as my day job doesn't require that I be in meetings during any of those times. I try to stream Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Starting at 11:30 a.m. is when we'll do writing. We'll do writing for a couple hours, and then at about 1:30 p.m. This is all in Eastern time zone. At around 1:30 p.m. I'll switch over and do some gaming. So you know, you'll have to convert to your own time zone. I don't care about you enough to do it for you, but yeah, I try to be live for those. This week it's looking like Thursday afternoon I will be unlikely to be streaming video games. I have a meeting scheduled then, so unless that gets canceled, which I don't think it will this time around, I probably will not be live Thursday afternoon, but every other time I should be live this week, so you can come check me out at those times. Okay, that's all my announcements. That's all my plugs and everything. I have to pee real bad, so I'm gonna take a break. Like I said, it'll be about a 15-minute break. I'll leave you here with some music. In a little bit, you'll probably see the stream hiccup a little bit. It'll die for a minute and then come back as I swap things over to gaming for the sake of the VODs. But yeah, I'll leave you here with some music, and I will be back in like 15-20 minutes. So you can either hang out, you can come check back in a little bit, or we can check you out tomorrow, whenever the next time you're gonna come stop by and see me is. Whatever it is, I appreciate you guys. It means a lot to me that you stopped by. Had a lot of fun here, and yeah, I'll see you guys in a few minutes. So sit tight, and I will be back shortly.